Hello, beautiful people. Today is 11th of May. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, every day I gave you some fodder for your mains exam, and I believe that you are maintaining the separate notebooks for the papers and you are keeping those fodder into the respective sections as I tell you. Friends, the purpose of this entire exercise is just to give you such material that you can score above average marks and can get a better sure shot rank. And now we will also be taking the contemporary examples and how they can be linked to the static subjects so that the scope of marks increases even more further. Guys, he's Dr. Zahid. He was traveling with a COVID 19 patient in an ambulance and suddenly noticed that his ventilator tube is not inserted properly. And if that is not corrected, then the person can go to the cardiac arrest. But into the ambulance, the light was not proper, and by wearing the PPE goggles, it was not possible to correctly insert that. And immediately, the doctor removed his PPE goggles and operated on that thing, and this is the most vulnerable point where a person can get infected. So guys, we can see that the action of Dr. Zahid reflects the altruism and compassion. Guys, altruism is a value where a person doesn't cares for his own life and is ready to help somebody else, and compassion is the spirit of getting moved by somebody else's pain. And friends, these are the most important foundational values of the civil servants which have been mentioned into the ethics paper number 4. So friends, if a question onto the real life examples or anecdotes come, you can use this particular example. So guys, let's begin with today's analysis. Friends, this is the page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper, and the first news item that we can see here is the norms which are issued by the NDMA into the aftermath of Vizag gas leak incident. Now, friends, recently you know that there was a gas leak incident into the LG polymer plant into the Vishakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. And guys, due to this particular incident, the National Disaster Management Authority has woken up and had issued a detailed advisory to all the industrial units, as now the work activities will be resumed because lockdown is going towards the easing out. Guys, if we talk about the LG polymer plant, the reason for the gas leak was the suboptimal storage of flammable styrene liquid. Guys, this liquid needs to be stored at below minus 20 temperature, and if it is not stored below that, then it will be converted into the gas which could leak. And this particular thing happened in Andhra Pradesh. Now, guys, why this particular thing was not being able to follow? Because of the lockdown, time to time routine checkups were not being made. So guys, now there could be a possibility that there are large number of industrial units which are closed due to the lockdown, and there could be instances that such type of accident could happen there. Therefore, NDMA has issued a kind of an SOP, and in that SOP it has directed that the industries should not try to achieve high production targets initially, as there could be certain accidents. Moreover, guys, it has been said that the employees should be sensitized and should identify the abnormalities or the sign of malfunctioning, such as strange sounds, smells, certain exposed wires, vibrations, leak, smoke, abnormal wobbling. Wobbling means a kind of a vibration, irregular grinding, or any other potential sign which could indicate that there could be malfunctioning. They should not be ignored, and adequate safety measures should be taken. As guys, you can see these are generalistic measures which should be adopted. Moreover, apart from this, specific instructions have also been issued by NDMA for the hazardous and flammable materials such as petroleum, crude oil, and certain hazardous gases, liquids, etc. Moreover, guys, the guidelines have also been issued for the chemical disaster, as this gas leak was a chemical disaster only. Management of chemical disaster, such instances which might be like chemical terrorism, where it deliberately a person is causing such type of leak or such type of explosion as a part of their terrorist activity. For them, the guidelines have also been issued. And guys, safety protocol for the transport of petroleum oil and lubricants have also been issued. So guys, this is a part and parcel of one advisory which has been given by the NDMA. Now, in this particular respect, NDMA has given the responsibility onto the different state governments, and the state governments need to seek the compliance from the district authorities, such as the district magistrate DM. Now, guys, please don't go too much into the details at what are the advisory. Just keep in your mind three, four, it will suffice. Now, guys, if we look to the NDMA, which is issuing the orders, then, guys, NDMA, first of all, has been constituted under the National Disaster Management Act 2005. Now, guys, NDMA is under the supervision of Ministry of Home Affairs, and the chairman of NDMA is the Prime Minister of India. Please keep these things into your mind because over and over they are coming into the news. Now, NDMA is the nodal agency for the preparation of disaster management plans, contingency plans, and all these kind of things. And guys, remember one particular thing, that is section number 8, which is under NDMA Act. Now, guys, section 8 says that there should be a National Executive Committee, and this National Executive Committee will be assisting the National Disaster Management Authority with doing all of these works. So, guys, these advisories which have been issued, they have also been principally suggested by the National Executive Committee of the NDMA, which is constituted under the NDM Act 2005, section number 8. Keep these thing into your mind. So, guys, this was all about this. Now we'll move to the next news item. Now, guys, we will take certain articles from the PIB, that is Press Information Bureau. Now, guys, first of all, DRDO has developed the UV ultraviolet systems for the disinfections. Now, the first one is the Dhruv's cabinet. Guys, so in this particular device, the items such as iPads, laptop, mobile phones, currency notes, check leaves, etc. could be placed. And this machine is entirely contactless. So it is equipped with proximity sensors, and guys, as the one will come near to this particular machine, the cabinet will automatically open. One can keep the device or the items in that, it will automatically close, and the once the disinfection is completed, the cabinet will open up, the items could be taken, and then the machine will go into the sleep mode. So it is entirely contactless, which is very much needed. And guys, apart from that, one more device has been made, that is the Notes Clean. Now, guys, currency notes can be disinfected into the Dhruv's cabinet also, but it will take much time because every note separately has to be placed. However, here there is a kind of a place where the bundle of notes can be, currency notes can be placed, and automatically it will take one by one all the notes. So these two things have been made. Please remember them for your prelims, as well as into the indigenization of technology, GS paper number 3, you can use them as an example. Now we'll move to the next news. Now, guys, here is one more important news into the PIB, that is Mission Sagar. So, guys, under the Mission Sagar, the Indian naval ship Kesari has been designated to reach the countries such as Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar, and Comoros, and will provide them with the food items, medications, and hydroxychloroquine tablets. Now, guys, this entire mission is the part of outreach program which has been started under the Prime Minister of India by the name Sagar. Now, guys, Sagar stands for security and growth for all in the region. And under the Sagar project, it is a big project. India is reaching to the countries into the Indian Ocean and providing them with the much needed assistance. So, guys, as the Sagar project is there, under the Sagar project, now Mission Sagar has been started to provide the assistance. Please keep it into your mind. Guys, few days back, we have also discussed the Mission Vande Bharat and the Setu Bharatam. So, all these exercises are for relief measures important for our prelims. Now, we'll move to the next news. Now, friends, here's a small news item on page number 4 where the collegium system has been mentioned. Now, guys, as per the news item, a survey was made on the advocates through 8 high courts, and on them various questions was asked, and the major question was that whether the collegium system for the appointment of judges is better or some other system. So they suggested that the collegium system ensures the competent judges into the judiciary. So guys, we will be looking a little bit onto this collegium system. We'll brush up our polity concepts. Now friends, collegium system is the system of selection of judges for the higher judiciary, that is the Supreme Court as well as the High Court. Now guys, if we talk about the Supreme Court, then the collegium system in its present shape was perfected in 1998 into the third judge's case. Now, as per third judge's case, the appointment of Supreme Court judges should be made by the president, but he can do such only by having consulted with the Chief Justice of India. And now, guys, the advice of CGI is binding on to the president. And behind the curtains, Chief Justice of India has to consult with the four senior most judges of the Supreme Court, and only if they concur the name, that name can be forwarded by the CGI to the president. So guys, this is the entire collegium system, and there is a collegium for the high court judges also. However, in 2014, 99th Constitutional Amendment Act was passed, and it provided that in place of collegium system there would be the National Judicial Appointment Commission, which will recommend the selection of the judges. So basically it provided that now the collegium system will not be functional. However, this entire setup has been declared as unconstitutional by judiciary in 2015 into the fourth judge's case. So still the collegium system is functional. Guys, if we briefly talk, then the collegium system was criticized because it was believed that here judiciary itself is appointing the judiciary, and it will lead to the nepotism and favoritism, due to which only the relative of judges will get the entry into the judiciary and will compromise the justice delivery system. So therefore NJAC came. However, it was also criticized because it is said that into this commission there is also the membership of the executive, and therefore now executive is interfering with the judiciary and will try to influence the judiciary so that the judiciary can give the favorable judgments for the executive. And guys, this particular thing goes in violation of article number 50 of the DPSP, where it has been said that there should be the separation of executive from the judiciary. So it was said that the provision is unconstitutional. So guys, this was all. Now we'll move to the next news. Now guys, on page number 5, Toda tribe has been mentioned, and guys, this is one of the very important tribe of the South India. Now first of all, why they are into the news? Because now the Toda tribes are producing the embroidered masks in order to meet the shortage of the masks. So by this thing they are fulfilling a social responsibility, and at the same time these masks are helping them to earn them a livelihood. Now, in this particular initiative, they are also being helped by certain non governmental organizations such as Last Forest, which is marketing these masks, and Indian Yards, which is helping them to produce these masks. Guys, in GS paper number 2, there is a topic of NGOs and self help groups. So, there you can use them as a reference for example. Now, guys, if we talk about the Todas, then these people are the natives of the Nilgiri mountains, particularly into the state of Tamil Nadu. So, guys, they are the ethnic class and they are pastoral in nature, like Aryans were there. And even into the Toda religion, these people worship the sacred buffalo, which further defines as how cattle are dear to them. Moreover, guys, these people still live into the small settlements which have 5 to 7 huts, and their settlement are called as Mund. And one more thing, the lands or the areas where these people are living are also the part of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, which has been designated as International Biosphere Reserve. Moreover, guys, their particular territory has also been part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And now, friends, as I have told you that they are making the embroidered masks, so their particular type of embroidery has also been given the GI tag. Very important. So guys, this was all about the Todas. Now we'll move to the next. Now friends, we are into the editorial section, and the first editorial talks as what will be the changes that will come into the different regions of the world after pandemic of COVID-19. Now, guys, we will see these changing trends one by one. And the first trend that can be seen is the rise of Asia. Now, guys, even into the history in the 18th century, it was witnessed that 50% of the world's GDP was accounted by the Asia. However, this pattern was changed after the Industrial Revolution, as then the Europe, particularly the England, became the major producer of the manufactured goods, and the crown was taken from the Asia. However, this order is now being restored after the pandemic of COVID 19 because the Asian countries, particularly China, South Korea, Japan, etc., have shown that how much resilient they are even into the pandemic. And moreover, apart from them, the other countries have also accounted for a less number of COVID cases when compared with the Europe and North America. So, this resilience will be keeping Asia again onto the crown. Moreover, guys, this particular thing has been earlier noticed also in 2008 when the global financial crisis came, and now this thing is being reaffirmed again. After, guys, that thing, the second trend that we can see is the retreat of USA. Now, guys, if we see the rise of USA, then USA started becoming a major power into the 20th century, and particularly after the Treaty of Versailles after World War One. Now, guys, into the Treaty of Versailles, the negotiations were being held between the Allied powers and the Central powers, and into the Allied group, America played an important role. After the Treaty of Versailles, there came the proposal to make the League of Nations, which was the precursor of United Nations. This proposal also came from the USA. Then, guys, after then, in World War II, also the USA plays a decisive role. Moreover, after World War II, the major institutions such as United Nations, IMF, etc., here also the USA played an important role. And still the 1991, when the Cold War was going on, there also the USA was a major power. So during the entire 20th century and even into the 21st century, first decade, USA was a major power. However, slowly, the USA is losing up their legitimacy because of the various actions that has been taken by the USA. For example, their policy in Afghanistan, their policy into the Gulf nations, their policy of putting sanctions on anybody who is not following the American mandate. And, guys, now the world countries are fed up with the unilateralist approach of the USA. And this particular thing was even recognized by the former President Barack Obama when he started the policy of leading from the behind. However, guys, the Donald Trump again changed this policy and went for the America first, and again started to assert himself. And this particular attitude has also been seen during the COVID-19 response, where USA did not came in front responsibly, rather in its place it took step such as diverting the supplies of other nations, and this thing is not being appreciated globally. Now, guys, the third trend that can be seen is the growing rivalries in Europe. Now, these rivalries are there because of three major reasons. First of all, is the ideological clash between the old Europe and the new Europe. First of all, what do we mean by the old Europe and new Europe? Now, guys, old Europe is a tag which has been given to the Western European nations such as Britain, whereas the new Europe is a tag which has been given to the Central and the East European nations, as earlier they were towards the communist regime, but now into the recent years only they have come towards the regime of democracy and the free market system. So therefore it has been seen that the old Europe have some other version of the future, whereas new Europe has some other version. Now, guys, obviously new Europe are the Central and East European countries which were earlier inclined with the communism, so they are more close with the countries such as China and Russia, whereas the old European countries, they were originally more inclined towards the USA. So what should be the future relations with the both China and Russia? They both have their different opinions. New Europe wants more close relation, whereas old Europe means believes into the distanced kind of relations. Moreover, now the expansions of European Union is also being talked about, and various new countries want to join the European Union. And now there have been disputes as what should be the exact terms of condition on whose basis they will be given to the entry. So again, the Europe is divided onto the question of enlargement of European Union. Moreover, guys, this divide of old Europe versus new Europe has been extended to such capacities that certain countries are asking for the illiberal democracy. Means that they are not very much convinced that the free and fair democracy is good for people. And the example of such country is the Hungary, whose president has repeatedly asked that illiberal democracy will not be doing some good, whereas the old Europe strongly believes that the liberal democracy should be the only democracy and illiberal democracy is wrong. So there is so much of ideological clash. After that, I told you that there is a dispute between the North Europe and the South Europe. Now guys, the North European countries are countries such as Germany. They are more financially fiscally conservative and don't want to take much of the debt to fight with the COVID-19 or for any developmental purpose, whereas southern countries are the countries such as Italy, which are facing huge financial crisis because of COVID-19 and because of other factors also, and they want that we should take a combined debt into the form of the corona bond, and such bonds should be utilized to fighting the COVID-19. So guys, they are promoting a kind of a debt, whereas the northern countries don't like this debt. So there is another dispute. And guys, all these rivalries have reached to such an extent that the earlier free European Union has now closed their boundaries, due to which the countries such as Italy are not able to get the critical medical supplies. And in this controversy, the China has jumped, and now China is providing the medical supplies to the Italy, due to which the rivalries have grown even more further. And guys, after all this thing, the cherry on the top is the Brexit. So, guys, as Brexit is happening, the negotiations have further divided the Europe into the various sub pockets where everybody has different version as what should be the future arrangement. Therefore, also the rivalries have increased. So, guys, now the Europe is so much divided and has reached to the point where it was before World War I only. Now, guys, after Europe, the next trend is rise of China. Now, guys, China is not only the regional power but is emerging to be the global power also. Friends, China started by making the strong base for cheap manufacturing and strong export regime. After that, China joined the WTO and took the most benefit of WTO's free trade regime and took the entire world under its manufacturing umbrella and made the countries dependent on China. And now, guys, China has stepped ahead from the cheap manufacturing and entering into the areas such as technology, renewable energy, all these kind of things, which were earlier the territory of USA. And now, guys, because of this particular thing, USA is threatened of China, and now a direct confrontation is going on between the two countries. Moreover, as the time is passing, China is becoming even more powerful into the terms of economy, diplomacy, as well as military. And in this context comes the pet project of China, that is a Belt and Road Initiative, under which China has invested so much of currency that it will not be possible for USA to contain the China in any terms, which USA has always did. Moreover, China also has a strong leadership into the form of Xi Jinping, on whom the limit to be the president for maximum two number of times has also been removed. So Xi Jinping will now even be continuing after 2022, and China will be on the path to progress. Now, the fifth trend comes is the failing institutions. Guys, it has been seen that whenever the global tensions rise, the global organization they tend to get jammed. It was seen when the United Nations Security Council was jammed during the Cold War, because then the USSR and USA were into the rivalry, and right now even the rivalry is between the China and the USA, due to which the WHO has been becoming defunct. Guys, now the USA has said that they will not be giving the grant to WHO, therefore WHO will be going into a kind of a paralysis. Moreover, into the present time, along with the WHO, United Nations Security Council, G20, G7, all have been seen to be paralyzed. And finally, guys, there comes the energy factor. Now it has been said that as countries are moving towards the green energies and renewable energies, there have been certain tensions into the countries such as West Asia, which are purely dependent on the oil revenues. And due to this particular thing, the disputes will rise and will further lead to even more rivalries. So, guys, these are all the trends which will be coming into the world order. They could be an order also or a disorder also. So please keep this thing into your mind. This is a very, very important topic for your GS paper number 2. Now, guys, we'll move to the next article. Now, friends, here is an editorial which talks about the role of grassroots institutions such as panchayats in meeting a crisis. Now, guys, this particular editorial is not only limited to COVID 19 but in any crisis. Now, first of all, guys, if we talk little bit about the background of panchayat, then Mahatma Gandhi ji always wanted to constitute India into the village republic, and these village republics were called as the true manifestation of the idea of Swaraj. And guys, in the same background, the Constitution of India adopted the article number 40, which talks about the constitution of panchayats, because guys, the panchayats will only be able to reach the idea of village republic. However, at the same time, if we talk about the views of Ambedkar, then Ambedkar believed that constituting panchayats or village republic will even be promoting the caste divisions into the society, as there also Dalits will often be downgraded. So in a nutshell, the view of both Gandhi and Ambedkar were contradictory to each other. However, they were resolved when the government passed the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act and constituted three-tier system of panchayats, where there were the panchayats at the district level, block level, and the village level. Now, guys, by constituting panchayat, the dream of Gandhiji was fulfilled. But into the panchayats, the reservation was given to the scheduled caste, due to which the dream of Ambedkar was also fulfilled. However, the idea of constituting panchayat was good, but if we look onto the ground, then guys, it has been seen that the implementation has not been that much good, and still the bureaucrats and the politicians don't want to share the power with the panchayats, due to which the panchayats are working as a defunct organizations. And now, guys, after talking this background, the editorial provides also that after any pandemic, the existing institutions are questioned, and in this background, the local institutions such as the panchayats will also be questioned. And in that background, people will either impose more faith into these institutions, or secondly, they will abandon these institutions and will ask more for the centralization. Now, guys, exactly what will happen, that is to be seen after the pandemic is over. But meanwhile, we can take the help of certain examples of panchayats, and we will understand by ourselves that where the people will be going. Now, guys, the first case study has been taken from the state of Kerala. Now, guys, everybody is praising the Kerala's chief minister and health minister for COVID response that they have been given, but actual superstar in this entire sequence is the panchayats of Kerala, who have been empowered since the inception. Now, guys, if we talk about the empowerment of panchayat, then it has been stated that one third of entire expenditure is done by the panchayats, and the money is devolved to them, by which they can carry the flexible developmental tasks. Moreover, guys, the money which is being given to the panchayat is the type of flexi funds. It means that they are untied. Wherever the panchayat bond, they can spend this thing. And due to it, people have a trust on panchayat, because panchayat is always giving the developmental response, and panchayat has a trust on the state government, because state is always helping them. And because of the trust, everybody came to the rescue of each other. And guys, it is not the case that only power has been given to panchayats, but their accountability measures have also been established. In this direction, the Kudumbashri projects come to help. Now, guys, Kudumbashri is a poverty eradication and women empowerment project of the Kerala government. And Kudumbashri projects is keeping the continuous supervision onto the panchayats, as whether they are actually carrying the work for the poverty eradication empowerment of women or not. So, guys, both the things have been balanced. Now guys, if we talk about the response of panchayats during the COVID-19, then the panchayats used their own flexi funds which have been given by the state government, and by this they fed the poor and destitute under the Ashraya program. They housed and gave the care to the physically challenged people through the Bud School, and various other initiatives were also taken up. So, friends, in this direction, the Kerala's panchayats have given a very good response. Now, there is one more case study of the Karnataka. Now, guys, here we will see that how many a times state government tried to restrict the panchayat, but still panchayat came to the forefront role and played a very important role here. Now, guys, if we talk about the background of Karnataka, then Karnataka has passed various legislations to empower the panchayats, but at the same time, the bureaucracy and the political leaders try to bind the hands of panchayat. Now, guys, what has happened? As the COVID-19 lockdown was imposed, movement of all the workers were restricted. And, guys, in this capacity, even nobody was able to visit the panchayats in order to see as what developmental works are going there. And guys, in this particular background, the panchayats themselves took the responsibility and took a resolution that nobody will go hungry, and even constituted a panchayat level task force which had the representatives from the health, had asha workers and other such representatives. And guys, by the common action, they took various important steps. For example, they decided to procure the masks for the people. However, guys, it was seen that at this particular step also the decision were obstructed by an officer appointed by the government, because he did not had any allegiance towards the panchayat. So guys, it has been seen that many a times the panchayats want to work on their action, but their actions are restricted by the officers who did not have belongingness. So decentralization is a very important task that should be taken. Moreover, guys, now one more fear is coming. As the COVID-19 is going on, there are various panchayats whose 5-year term will end. And in that capacity, there is a fear that government will appoint their own officers to work as the representatives of panchayat. And in that particular thing, there could be a problem if they will not reflect the concerns of people. So guys, this was all about the panchayats. A very good article. Now we'll move to the next article. Now, guys, from the past 2 days, that is into the 9th of May editorial as well as the 10th of May editorial, we are discussing about the issues of the workers, particularly the migrant workers. And we had seen that the various legislations have been passed by the government, such as Uttar Pradesh as well as Madhya Pradesh, where the working hours have been increased. Moreover, guys, if you remember, yesterday we had also seen the recommendation by Confederation of Indian Industry, where it has been seen that if people don't come back to the work, then the penal actions should be taken against them. So all these things we have seen. Now question comes that in all these circumstances, do the workers have a fundamental right? And yes, if they have fundamental right, then how it is being breached or not? So this particular dimension will be seeing into the present article. So now, guys, three things are being done. First of all, working hours being increased. Secondly, it is being said that their minimum wages should not be revised. And thirdly, it is also being said that if they don't come back, the penal actions could also be taken under the industrial orders. Now, in this thing, their fundamental right under article number 23 is being violated, because it provides that there cannot be a forced labor. Moreover, to further enhance the scope of article 23, Supreme Court in PUDR versus Union of India case held that the force is not only the physical force, but it also includes using the compulsion of economic circumstances, that if a person is poor, taking advantage of that circumstance is also a type of a force. And making them him to work below the minimum remuneration or below the minimum wage is also a type of a force. So the government is now might be breaching the fundamental right, which is not good for the welfarist state. Moreover, guys, there is also a recommendation of ILO, that is Employment and Decent Work for Peace and Resilience recommendations of 2017. They say that after a disaster, a worker should be left free to choose when he wants to come back to the work. He should not be forced. So, in this direction, everything which is happening might be grossly unjust. So, guys, please remember all these things for your GS2. Now, we'll move to the next. Now, friends, here's a news item on page number 10, where the National Institute of Virology Pune has developed a test to detect the coronavirus. Now, guys, this test is called as ELISA test, which stands for the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Now, guys, before going into the test, we will look certain of the background. Guys, two developments have taken place. Development number one, now the government has decided that it will check for the community transmission. We had discussed this thing earlier, yesterday also. Now, into the community transmission, what will be done? The random testing of the people will be carried, and in this particular exercise, more than 30,000 people will be randomly tested. So, guys, for to carry such a number of tests, we need to have the test kits. And guys, earlier we were thinking that these test kits will be the rapid antibody test kits which we were decided to procure from the China. But what has happened? The Chinese kits, they have been faulty and were giving the wrong results. So now we are not able to carry the rapid antibody testing which we earlier thought. So in this capacity, now what has happened? The National Institute of Virology Pune, they had made their own test which is called as ELISA test. Now, guys, this ELISA test is working on the same principle as the rapid antibody test were working. Now, guys, into these tests, we used to detect the antibodies into the blood, because antibodies will only develop if there was a virus, and in the response, these antibodies will develop. So, into the ELISA also, we see whether the antibodies have been developed into the blood or not, and in their presence we will declare a person as if he had infected or not. So guys, essentially the philosophy or the principle of both ELISA as well as rapid antibody test is same, but there is a difference. Now, rapid antibody tests are just like a pregnancy kits in which you can take the test without much of expertise, and within few minutes you can get the results. And guys, they are very much cheap also, whereas in ELISA test the procedure is not that much simple. Guys, here large number of samples will be taken into the lab and they will be tested together, and the results will be coming in approximately 2.5 to 3 hours, and here much of equipment and expertise is needed into the ELISA. Guys, in a nutshell, these rapid antibody tests are a type of self-diagnostic mechanisms without any much expertise, whereas ELISA are the lab-based test, but the principle is same. Now, guys, the ELISA test, which has been prepared by the National Institute of Virology, can test 90 samples together at one time and can give results into the 2.5 hours. So, large number of people can be tested here together. Now, guys, NIV has given the technology of ELISA test to a pharmaceutical agency, that is Zydus Cadila, and now they will be making the tests. Now, guys, if we talk about the National Institute of Virology, then it is a premier institution which is headquartered in Pune, and it is an integral part of the ICMR, that is Indian Council of Medical Research. And along with ICMR, the Rockefeller Institute of USA has also giving funding and support to the National Institute of Virology. Moreover, guys, NIV has also been identified by WHO as a collaboration laboratory for Southeast Asia region. Now, what does it means is very simple, guys. If there will be the cases of viral fevers such as Japanese encephalitis, rotavirus, measles, then in that cases, NIV will be the collaborating center, will carry the testing. Therefore, it is a collaborating partner of WHO. So, guys, this is all about the new test and NIV. So, guys, now we'll be winding up today's session as these are the important news articles. I hope you are liking it. Thank you so much.